When I found Magda's house, I stood beneath the nearest streetlight that was not burned out and looked at the address written on my hand. The house was considerably smaller than I was used to. Though the lights were on inside, the door was dark and uninviting. But when I rang her doorbell, all I could think of were her comforting words and the welcome I would receive.
"Come in here where it's nice and warm, and let me take a look at you,"
she would say as she opened the door and let the golden light pour into the darkness, just like my mother once did. Then she would look me up and down, primping her lips and widening her eyes, appreciating the adolescent gift the fates had dropped on her doorstep. But I was in for a rude awakening.
"Chris,
Magda said when she opened the door.
How did you know I was here?"
There was a pained expression on her face as she poked her head out, hiding the rest of her body behind the door. This was not quite the reception I imagined, and I stuttered and told her I looked her up in the phone book. It was the only M. Laszlo listed. Then a man's voice came from inside. Though Magda was not married, I never stopped to think she did not live alone. She pulled her head behind the door to explain to her man what reason a boy my age might happen to find his way to the house of a middle-aged woman on a night like this. My heart pounded like a trapped rat. She poked her head out again with a tight-lipped smile.
"What do you want?"
My father threw me out, I said, and lowered my head. I need a place to stay. Her mood softened, but the voice called her back in the house before she responded. Behind the door, I heard the two of them talking in some strange and mysterious language. And, though I did not understand what they were saying, I knew they were talking about me, and I felt like a fool. No doubt she had many lovers to choose from. When she reappeared, her expression and the tone of her voice were those I came to know over the months.
"Of course you can stay with us,"
she said, staring at the packed duffel bag in my hands.
"for the night."
But now I wondered how to answer the questions of a man who, no doubt, was interested in just what intentions I had with his woman. I stood there for a moment, not knowing what to do.
"You're letting all the warm air out,"
Magda motioned to me.
"Get inside."
There was no escape from the consequences of my actions now, and when I crossed Magda's threshold, I was confronted with what looked to my teenage eyes to be the oldest man I had ever seen. Hump-backed and bandy-legged, he looked like some craftsman god Magda told me about from Greek mythology. He wore an undershirt that was ripped in places and stained yellow under the arms and across the chest from years of sweat. His gray hair was thin and unkempt and rose out of his skull like the wiry bristles on a boar's back. His skin was pale and wrinkled like that of a featherless chicken.
"This is my father,"
she said as the old man put his cigarette between his lips and extended an arm covered in black spotches that must, at one time, have been tattoos. Though he disgusted me, without him I would have been left out in the cold. It was he who convinced Magda to let me in. Neither of them, he later told me, would be there without the hospitality strangers once showed him along the way. He frightened me, and I clenched my teeth and tried to smile when I extended a limp hand toward his and asked, "How do you do?"
"Shitty,"
he said in his immigrant's accent as he pulled a cigarette out of his mouth and began coughing. Then he smiled to reveal an almost complete set of dingy and worm-eaten teeth.
"But what the hell, I'm old, I should be used to it."